thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your interest in the city of Rowlett and you being here, whether you're here in person or you're watching on Facebook Live or you're viewing this broadcast at a later time. You are here because you care about the city of Rowlett and you want to be part of the decision making for the future of Rowlett and for our future generations. So thank you so much for being here. We are broadcasting this on Facebook Live, and it will be available on our city Facebook page for viewing at a later time also. We will be taking questions at the end of our presentation, because sometimes if you ask questions in the middle of the presentation, they get answered somewhere in the presentation. So we will be taking questions at the end of the presentations, and we will also be monitoring messages on Facebook Live and answering those in real time as we go through the night. So I first want to start off introducing you to a couple of council members. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Tammy Dana Bashan. I'm the mayor of the city of Rowlett, and it is my honor and privilege to represent this city as your mayor. We have two council members here. We got Mayor Pro Tem Martha Brown, and we got Councilman Blake Margolis. So thank you for being here. I also want to introduce a few of the city staff that are here that will be either presenting or answering questions tonight. We have our city manager, Brian Funderburg. We have our deputy city manager, Paul Stevens. We have, Mark's not here yet. Mark's not here, correct? Okay. We have our director of parks, Angie Smith. We have our director of public works, Sean Poe, who will be doing some of the presentation. And we have our Assistant Chief Basket and our Battalion Chief Gautier. Am I close? All right, thanks. So all of these individuals will be part of the probably Q&A and presentation tonight, so I wanted to introduce them. So we're in a journey, and we've been under a journey for at least the last 4 years. 4 years ago, we formed a citizen-led group called a Citizen Investment Advisory Board. And that citizen-led investment advisory board undertook a year-long process starting 4 years ago to determine what we could do in a capital improvement program for our city. And as a result of that, 3 years ago, we took to the voters a bond offering of about $26 million. And that was approved by the voters in 2015. And the program that we underwent, there was a little bit of a blip. Everybody remember the tornado of December 26, 2015? That slowed things down on the bond a little bit, and we're going to talk about the status of the bond here tonight, or the capital projects here tonight. But we undertook a 3-year program to invest in this city and to implement capital improvement projects as a result of that bond offering. And many, many of those projects are completed today or well underway. And Mr. Poe is going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. When we undertook that 4 years ago, our plan was that we would have a recurring process on a 3-year basis to invest in our community in a capital improvement program. So we did that in 2015, we did that over the next 3 years, and now we are here in 2018 coming to you again and asking you to consider supporting the next capital improvement program. The citizen-led Community Investment Advisory Board was established again and has been working hard over many, many months, many hours, and we have a couple of our members here tonight from the Community Investment Advisory Board. So when I call your name, go ahead and stand up. I'm gonna call everybody's name that's on the Community Investment Advisory Board. Alex Koss is our chair. Jeff Sheldon is our vice chair. And then our members are Chad Grant, Oscar Aranda, Robin Rahu, who's here, Kim Lott, who's here, Dan Walker, Loki Coatcap, and David Williams, who is here, and Sammy Walker. And so I would like to publicly thank this group and thank all of your time and investment, spent hours and hours and months going through, analyzing what the needs are of the community, getting input from our entire citizen base, and really assessing those needs, and ultimately making a recommendation to the City Council, which you are here tonight to hear. So we will go through that recommendation, and we really appreciate all your assistance with all of your work in the Community Investment Advisory Board. So that's my introductory comments. I'm going to turn it over to Sean Poe. He's going to go through a lot of detail, and then like I said, we will take questions after that. So, Mr. Poe.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening. Again, once again, thank you for taking the time out in your busy schedule to be here tonight. It's an exciting time for Rowlett. I can't be happier enough for the city of Rowlett and the residents. Tonight's meeting is about communication, and it's about having open dialogue to be able to educate the voters on the proposed bond election. There are several topics we're going to talk about tonight. We're basically going to talk about what the Community Investment Advisory Board, what their task was, what is the status of the projects for the 2015 bond program, to give you an idea of the progress that we've made thus far. How much will the initiative cost for the 2018 bond program? What were the propositions that were approved, recommended by the Community Investment Advisory Board and then subsequently approved by Council? And what projects are being proposed? We'll go into more detail for each one of those, and then talk about where you can get additional information. So the goals of the Community Investment Advisory Board were simple. They wanted to continue with the 3-year rolling bond program implementation started in 2015 without incurring a property tax rate increase, while making the most of the return on investment and maximizing bonding capacity in the future years. The strategy for success that was brought up by the CIAB was to sustain financial goals, have financially sustainable goals, have a foundation for success that included these factors, working the community priorities and how the projects were ranked, and obviously they were driven for results with the 3 propositions with the subsequent election day on May 5th. So how were the projects ranked? There were a lot of projects that were identified, and obviously the projects that are needed exceed the resources that we have. So a ranking system had to be established. The initial round of evaluations resulted in identifying 56 projects. These projects were identified through public process. There was a project identification form on the website. There was several presentations given to civic organizations, homeowners associations, as well as boards and commissions that would become stakeholders. And then staff also was asked by the board to provide a wish list on some of the projects that we felt like were needed in the city. And all in all, when you total all the projects that were identified, it was over $418 million with the estimates that were developed. Staff alone identified over $225 million. And you can see behind me how that was broken out between alleys, streets, drainage projects, and parks projects, as well as public safety and facilities. So as you can see, with the amount of projects that are needed and the goals of the Community Investment Advisory Board, or CIAB, to get it to $60 million was an arduous task. The board spent many meetings. We met at least once a month. They met on a Saturday for almost the whole day, talking the projects and putting together their recommendation to get down from $418 million to the $60 million. There was a lot of hard choices that they had to make. There was a lot of constructive feedback, and there was some, at times it was a little touchy with some of the discussions that taken place, but it always remained professional and very, very good even between the members. The ranking criteria that was developed was on a 10 ranking criterias. Each was weighted the same, and this was to ensure that there was a balance between some of the public safety projects with the quality of life projects versus the infrastructure projects. So each of the projects were ranked, and that's how the list was developed. So what about the projects that didn't make it? Well, the city has a current a CIP, a 5-year rolling CIP that the city council considers every year. And with that, the first year of the CIP, the 5-year CIP, is typically budgeted with the operating budget. The 4 years, the out years are basically just a plan of what other projects that are out there is the needs and resources that we have. That plan changes each year because the needs and resources may also change. So it's updated every year. It's a rolling plan. So those projects that didn't make the cut are not going to be forgotten. They'll be considered in the next bond election, also ranked and prioritized, so they won't go away. But we're also, between now and the next bond election in 2021, should council decide to do that, there's also going to be the ability to keep providing your input on what other projects you feel the city needs. So as far as the 2015 bond program, you know, it just seems like yesterday that was voted on successfully. As the mayor indicated, just almost $26 million of bonds were issued with 3 propositions with streets, parks, and public safety. And you can see the breakout between those 3 propositions. We've made a lot of progress since the tornado and some of the staffing changes that the city had to overcome. And the goal is to get all the projects that are in the 2015 bond program. Many have already been completed, but at least to get them under construction by the end of 2018 for those that are currently in design. For Proposition 1, there's 3 large projects that are under construction, that are not under construction. We plan to bid those out by May 2018. That's the Main Street project, the Lake Country project, and I just went blank, the Main Street right turn lane. And then for Proposition 2, the majority of those projects have been completed. Angie's done a great job, her and her staff, of getting years 1 and 2 completed in the 3-year plan. And they didn't get the funding for year 3 until August of 2017. So they're working to get those projects completed. In Proposition 3, there's only one project yet to be completed, and that's the public safety facility, which we plan on bidding later this month. So how much would this bond program cost us? That's the biggest question that we typically get. And I'm an engineer, I'm not a financial expert. I'll try to explain this slide as best I can. But this slide depicts the current existing debt service schedule. The area in black represents the current tax-supported debt that the city is paying on, and the yellow shows what the schedule looked like after the debt was issued in 2017. The years are on the bottom of the graph, and then the amount of money is on the left side. As you can see, over time, that debt is being paid off, so that the bonding capacity basically is the area in gray that the city could issue without increasing the tax rate. So as the debt gets paid down, the additional capacity increases. Now, if you take into account growth, as the city's growing, it receives new tax revenue for the properties that develop, the area in green increases that even further. And these estimates were based on very conservative measures with a higher interest rate than what's out there today and a slower rate of growth that we're currently experiencing. Right now, we've got about $1.5 billion of development that's in the process of being developed in the city. So that conservative approach was taken to estimate this capacity to determine how much they could leverage over the next several years. And then if you take that over every 3 years, which are the different colors on the graph, you can see that it basically eats away at that bonding capacity without increasing that tax rate increase. So the initial forecast that the financial consultants gave us was around $40 million that could be issued without a tax rate increase. As I got into it, that range increased between $60 and $75 million. However, the $75 million option would eat into the bonding capacity for 2021 quite dramatically. So the council, being conservative, they chose to look at the $60 million option so that we would have the ability to continue a sizable bond election in 2021. So that's what was proposed. That's what the Community Investment Advisory Board developed for the projects, and it's just under $60 million. And the only way we can't issue that money out at one time. We've got to issue it out in thirds, increments of $20 million. So theoretically, we get the question, well, can all these projects be done in 3 years? And the answer is no. Some of these projects take, the design and engineering sometimes takes up to 2 years to get, if there's right-of-way acquisition to be acquired. But for the majority of them, on the Proposition B and Proposition C in the fire department, most of those could be done in the 3-year time frame. But some of the infrastructure projects, they take time, especially how the bonds are issued. But staff is working diligently, just like we're doing the 2015, to get them out and delivered as soon as possible. This is a spreadsheet that was developed by our financial consultants, just showing the tax capacity. It's really hard to read, I know, from where your standpoint, but you can view it later on online. But if the bond is successful, we issue $60 million this 3 years. In 2021, we'd have a little bit over about $28 million to be able to issue in that bond election, which is important given the needs that we talked about earlier. So if the bond is successful, what projects will be built? The next few slides are the detailed slides of each project, and I'll go over them individually. The first slide I want to show you is just all the program on one slide. The Proposition A has 8 projects totaling a little bit over $40 million. That's for streets and drainage. Proposition B is for parks, trails, and recreational facilities. It's there's 12 projects with about $8.8 million. And then the Proposition C is public safety and facilities, and it's about $9.3 million. This is how the bond projects that are proposed break out. So about 69%, the majority, obviously, is dedicated to paving and drainage, given the needs of the community. However, there's also needs that for our parks and public safety, and those are broken out about 15 to 16% collectively. So as far as the City Council and Community Investment Advisory Board, as I indicated previously, the next few slides will go over Proposition A, and then Proposition B and Proposition C. Proposition A, this is the language that was required to be in the ordinance that the City Council approved to call the election. It totals a little bit of over $41 million, and that includes the cost of the bond issuance, because there's fees that have to be associated with issuing bonds. And as you can see, it covers a gamut of street and paving and drainage improvements within that paragraph. This isn't what you're going to see on the ballot. It'll just be one sentence. But this is what required by state law to ensure that this pot of money doesn't get spent on any projects that are outside the scope of paving and drainage. In the 2015 bond election, there were several projects in the neighborhoods that were funded that included the design of Phase 1 and Phase 2. We had to break them out in 2 phases because of the size of the projects. So the next several slides are basically improving Phase 2 of those projects. Phase 1 is under construction on 2 of those, and Phase 1 on the last project in Lake Country will be started later this year. But the first project is Phase 2, Dow Rock Estates. This will be one of the first ones that we start construction, because the construction is already underway on Phase 1. It's already been designed for Phase 2, and once the bonds are issued in the summer, we'll go into construction for Phase 2. And this project totals about $3.4 million. The streets that are outlined in red are Phase 1 that's under construction, and in the lighter color, the orange, yellow, those are the projects that are identified in Phase 2. Then there's Highland Meadows. That project is also under construction for Phase 1, and the design is complete for Phase 2. And so the streets that are in orange will be phase 2. This project is about $2.2 million. And this will involve reconstructing the street, installing new sidewalks and street lights, as well as plant trees where the homeowners would request them. Then there's phase 2 of Lake Country Estates. The streets in blue are phase 2, and the streets in red are phase 1. And this is going to total about $2.8 million for that neighborhood. The next project are turn lanes, are lanes for capacity improvements along our arterial streets that receive most of the traffic, especially in the peak times. This project totals $3.5 million, of which $500,000 is design cost. And we've identified at least 7 locations where we feel, based on observations, complaints, and just our experience, that these would be great candidates for this project. However, we're going to do a traffic study as part of the design to make sure that we prioritize them and install the ones that are needed the most, based on traffic volumes, delay, and so forth. And there's also opportunities that we can partner with developers, because a lot of these turn lanes are located on undeveloped parcels. And if that's the case, the developer, if they contribute, we can use that money and save the bond money and use that on other projects. So I've got a couple of examples behind me. One of them at the intersection of Miller and the President George Bush Turnpike, as well as State Highway 66. And the turn lane that was put in for eastbound traffic a couple of years ago has been very successful. It has increased the capacity at intersection tremendously. We hope to do the same for the turn lane headed eastbound. I think I said eastbound, it was for westbound earlier, that's been constructed. Then we get into alleys, and this is one of our largest needs in the city. Not everybody has an alley, but the people that do have alleys, that over 40% of our 48% of our alleys are in a state of repair that only requires reconstruction. It doesn't make sense to put maintenance dollars in those alleys because they're so badly damaged. And just visual just shows you all the areas in red are all those alleys. So we have to take basically a small bite of the apple each year to continue to reconstruct our alleys with not only bond fund proceeds, but money that the city council appropriates in the budget each year through the refuse fund, as well as through the general cash CIP. So this project, there's $63 million. If we could do a bond program just on the alleys, it'd be $63 million to reconstruct all these alleys. The board wanted to do about 10% of that, so they recommended $7 million and that's what the city council approved. This is a list of the top 50 alleys, basically the worst 50 alleys in the city. But it's a list, you can see the headway that we're making with the program currently. All these projects are either designed or in construction or about to be in construction or have been completed. So with the last bond program, we're getting probably the top 16 or 17 alleys. So our goal is to continue down this list. And if there's not bond money to continue this, then your alley's never going to make it up your list. So we want to continue this bond program to make sure that we can continue our alley reconstruction. The next project is Miller Road from east of the railroad tracks to Dow Rock Road. This project totals about $8.8 million. However, the Dallas County has dedicated $2.8 million previously in the early 2000s for the reconstruction of this project. It'll be widening Miller to a 4-lane divided roadway, installing sidewalks on each side. It'll also include widening Chisa north and south of Miller at the traffic signal to get that capacity to decrease that delay at that intersection. This project has already been designed. It's been designed for about 10 years, so we've already met with Dallas County. They dusted the plans off, and they're going to have to make sure that everything is correct because conditions have changed, because this was right where the tornado went through. But the goal is to get those plans in a state that we can be used so we can bid this project out fairly quickly once the first proceeds of bonds are issued. And the city does plan to contact the commissioner's office to see if there's additional funds to make it a true 50-50 program as it was planned for back in the early 2000s, it was a shy under $6 million, and they dedicated 2.8. And you can see because of the lack of funding that the city had, that project's increased $2 million in just 10 years. The next project is our neighborhood streets project to continue. You know, we started with Dow Rock Estates, Highland Meadows, and Lake Country, Southridge. Well, this is the next phase of neighborhood projects, and I wanted to show you this slide because it breaks out the cities based on the ranking of the streets, and what we term a pavement conditioning index, or PCI. The areas in green are excellent streets. They're probably brand new or less than 2 or 3 years old. So the maintenance on those streets are very minimal. The yellow streets are in good condition. Their PCI is between 56 and 85, and the city can maintain that yearly with the pavement management dollars that are granted each year in our budget, with just some minimal crack sealing and just small repairs. I'm sorry, those were the green and 90. I'm sorry, the yellow is 56 to 85. Can't read my own writing. And the orange is what we call poor, which is the PCI is 41 to 55. And once you get to about 55, the work that the city can do with our staff and with our contractors, with the cash CIP, begins to tail off. And we're starting to look at reconstruction is the only option to repair the roadways. So those are the orange and red streets. And you can see there's quite a few of those on this map. So the board had to look at all these streets and make a determination on which one to include. And it's not only the street conditions that we look at when we prioritize these. There's issues about the underground utilities, what condition they're in, and drainage. So there's other factors, not just the pavement condition. And so the next phase of neighborhoods that's proposed is Lakeland Heights over off Rowlett Road and Kyle. Parts of Kyle, Smart Street, Lisa, and Patricia will be reconstructed. This project's about $3.4 million, and it will be broken up into 2 phases with the hope that in the 2021, we'll design it now. In the 2021 election, we can go right into construction for phase 2. And the streets are in need of repair. Most of these streets are asphalt. They're not the city standards. However, the water and sewer lines need replaced. They're in very bad condition. The city is in there constantly jetting the sewer out where we have, it's a clay sewer line. There's a lot of collapses. So this project would include the water and sewer, but it'll be funded through our revenue CIP and not this bond program. Only the streets and drainage would be the bond program. And finally, the Chisa Road from Dow Rock to south of Miller is the last project for Proposition A. It totals $12.5 million. And so the goal of this project is to widen Chisa to a 4-lane divided section where it's not adjacent to the railroad tracks. Where it's along the railroad tracks, it'll be a 4-lane undivided, so that because of the right-of-way constrictions along the railroad track, because the city will not be able to acquire a right-of-way from the railroad. We can, but it would take many, many years, and which would delay the project. It also includes widening, or I should say, we're narrowing the median for Dow Rock, because Dow Rock was designed back in the late 90s to be a 6-lane divided roadway. That's why the median is so wide, so that they can add the 3rd lane in each direction and take it from the median. So that will also include narrowing the median to provide 3 lanes in each direction on Dow Rock on either side of Chisa to get more capacity at that intersection. And then the Bayside project is going to continue that widening of Dow Rock, median narrowing, to provide that 6-lane cross-section south of the railroad tracks. And then TxDOT's going to pick it up with the I-30 project. So basically just north of Chisa all the way to I-30, you'll have the capacity of 3 lanes in each direction. And this project was chosen by the Community Investment Advisory Board, recommended, due to the potential increase of traffic from Bayside and beginning that new north-south corridor to offset what's on Dow Rock. Dow Rock has about 25,000 cars a day. So we envision a lot of traffic is going to be diverted to Chisa to avoid that delay on Dow Rock, especially up at 66. So they also looked at doing the north of Miller, but they felt like this was a better opportunity to begin the Chisa reconstruction. And also there's a lot of vacant land north of Miller, and so there could be some partnering opportunities with the developers as they come in and develop those properties. So that covered Proposition A, and that's my basically forte. And I'll go over the parks, trails, and recreational facilities, which is Proposition B. Angie's here if I can't answer any questions later tonight. But this proposition is almost $9 million, and this is the verbiage from the ordinance. And it includes the first phase of Sethe Park. Sethe Park is located off Main Street, down Centennial, near Coyle Middle School. And it's it will be the key park for the downtown urban area. They'll have many phases of this park just due to the sheer size. And the first phase will include revamping some of the design and phasing the project later. Well, we're going to phase it later on as that area develops. So that's the first phase. They're looking at several improvements such as a splash pad. They just recently did the dog park there, which has created a lot of traffic. The next project is at Wet Zone Park at $700,000. This is located behind Community Center, just down the way, and it's next to Kids Kingdom. Last year was the most successful year for the Wet Zone Park, and they attribute that to the new feature that was funded for the 2015 bond program. So these improvements will include a speed slide, a new feature, some lighting replacement, sound system, and playground replacement to continue maintaining what they have there, but also add to the entertainment value. The Lakefront at Pecan Park, this is at the end of Main Street as you cross under the trestle as you pass the community center. And this project will be for paving the parking area, which is basically a gravel parking area. And this area can be used for potential kayak and canoe launches, and they'll be installing picnic benches as well. And it totals $400,000. Next is the Kenwood Heights. This is a pocket park, neighborhood park over off Kenwood Drive by Walmart and Sprouts. In 2015, they did some improvements with that bond program, and through just the funding and the general budget. This project will add to that without disturbing any of those improvements that have already been done. And it costs be $250,000 for a new basketball court, some signage, and irrigation. Twin Star Park is located off Armstrong Lane, off Princeton, just where the Dow Rock and Princeton splits. This project cost is $250,000, and there'll be some playground upgrades, signage, and irrigation improvements. Utilizing the newly adopted Master Parks and Trails plans, the Community Investment Advisory Board and Council wanted to dedicate money towards trail construction. This is one of the most sought-after amenities that a lot of cities in the region try to construct, and they do that in unison with developer participation. Well, as you know, most of the areas in Rowlett are developed, so it's up to the city through this bond program to begin installing some of the trails and adding on to the ones that we currently have. And this is just a map of the trail parks, the trail system that's in the Parks Master Plan. The actual locations will be determined once we get into the design and identify those locations. And it's about almost $2.5 million. And there's a project for improving the greens, renovating 23 greens at the Waterview Golf Course. This project totals $1.1 million. That cost also includes replacing the retaining walls on holes number 3, 8, and 18 that are around the greens. They're in dire need of repair that are about to fail. So what they'll do is there's 23 greens, including the practice green and the nursery and some of the par 3 course holes. So there's 23 greens total that will be rehabilitated and renovated. and those will be done with Bermuda grass. Then there's money to purchase a mobile stage for $300,000. This will be used for the events that the city currently has, as well as being able to plan for additional events in the future. And there may be an opportunity to rent it out to communities that are adjacent or near Rowlett as revenue to the city. And the community park is a $600,000 project with sports field upgrades, baseball scoreboards, and sidewalk will be constructed from the water view down near St. Andrews to the parking area within the park. Currently, you have to walk, if you're coming from Waterview, you have to basically walk on that 24-foot wide fire lane, which is dangerous to do so. And this is our largest marquee project. We want to continue investing in it accordingly. Then there's Shorewood Park. This is off Wood Lake Drive, east of Dow Rock, between Schrady and Lakeview Parkway. It's $200,000. It's going to be able to use that money to install a restroom facility and restore and improve the baseball field that's there. And then there's $500,000 for sports field construction. And in my previous presentations, I said these were to renovate existing fields. This is actually to build new fields. And I apologize for that oversight, but with the increasing participation in the city's athletic programs, there's always a need for additional soccer fields, baseball fields, and other practice fields. So this money will be to go to new practice fields to be able to expand those programs and just be able to sustain and keep up with the success that those programs have had. And then there's the Environmental Learning Center. This is located off Chisa and Dandridge, across from the Schrady Middle School and near Stedham Elementary. This is for $250,000, of which $50,000 will match the Keep Rowlett Beautiful funds to get a schematic design so that they can embark on a fund campaign to raise dollars for the construction of the project. And then $200,000 will be used with that fundraising for the Keep Rowlett Beautiful and other nonprofits that contribute funds to this project. So that was all the parks and open space projects, and the last proposition is Proposition C for public safety and facilities. It totals almost $9.5 million. It includes two projects. The fire station number 2 that's currently on Dow Rock Road. It opened in 1986, and it serves the southeast portion of the city. This fire station has outgrown its useful life. You can see some pictures behind me of how cramped the quarters are. There's offices that once were closets, and these firefighters, they spend a third of their life stationed at this fire station. It's in dire need of replacement. So it's going to be rebuilt and proposed to be rebuilt off Schrady Road, where the public safety facility is about to start. And it'll cost about $9 million. And this is the site plan for it off Schrady. It'll be $9 million, which includes a traffic signal at Dow Rock and Schrady so that the apparatus and medics can get out safely onto Dow Rock. And then the last project is a municipal complex assessment and schematic design. And as you may know, the city services are spread out over 18 facilities within the city limits, which really confuses customers because they'll always come into Public Works and will say, you got to go over here or you got to go here. And so there's most of the facilities that we have outlasted their life as well. Some of them several lives, like City Hall. It was initially a school in the Rowlett Independent School District. It was converted to City Hall, and then it was redone again, and it's in need of repair now. So what the goal of this project is to hire a consultant to evaluate what the needs the city currently has and to develop some options so that we can have a roadmap on future needs for facilities, with the goal of using this plan to provide information to the voters so that we can consider for future bond elections, so that we can have a plan in place, potentially for a new municipal complex and a one-stop shop where you can just go one place to do all your services. So this totals $300,000 and is the last project. So how can you get more information? Well, there's the city has embarked on a large voter education strategy. We're being assisted with the Capital Investment Advisory Board. They've given several presentations, and with the help of the City Council. But we've created websites, web pages. We're using Facebook and all the other social media to get the word out, to educate the voters on the projects that are there and how they will be investing in our community. This is the second of 2 town hall meetings that have occurred, and I've presented at the Chamber of Commerce and several of the boards and commissions as well. There was an interactive map that was designed, and so if you go to the home page, there's a link that you can click on. I've got an arrow showing where that is located, and it pulls up a map, and you can basically see all the projects on the map and see where they're situated, to see that there's really something for everybody in all 4 quadrants of the city. It may not necessarily be the project you're looking for, because it may not be your street, but it's an investment in that area of that town. It's very important. On the website, there's a link for the Community Investment Bond Program, which will have this presentation. It has several other links for information. It has links to the flyer that everybody received in the mail, the ratepayers. And so in addition to that, in the social media, you can get all the information that you need. So if we don't answer your question tonight, you can go to here. There's also an email set up that 2018bond@rowlett.com, and that comes to me and other staff members to be able to answer your question on the fly. Important milestones and dates. It's hard to believe, but early voting starts on the 23rd, and it lasts through May 3rd. It's already here, and Election Day is Saturday, May 5th. And if once successful, the bonds will be the first of 3 issuances will occur in the summer of 18. And the design and planning and construction of the projects that weren't selected, or those projects that were selected, will be continue over the next 3+ years to continue that bond program. And then the work for the CIAB is not over. They're going to be meeting continually each month to develop and look at additional projects for the 2021 bond election. This is a slide showing what the voters will see at the voter box. It's very short and simple. Yes or no, do you favor Proposition A? Yes or no, do you favor Proposition B? Yes or no, do you favor Proposition C? It's very clear, and so we wanted to just give you an idea of what that's going to look like. Other things you may need, I mentioned the mailer earlier, and the website, or the email address. We'll continue to have this being streamed on Facebook as well as on the RTN 16, and you can get a link to the flyer as well. So with that, that's my presentation, and with the help of my fellow staff members, I'll be glad to take any questions. We do have the mic that I'd ask you to speak in. We've got a couple people with them, because that way the people on Facebook will be able to hear your question live on Facebook.
All right, guys, we have some mics here, so if y'all have any questions, you want to start?
Oh, we got to have, there we go.
Thank you. Dave Hull. I live over on Miller Road by that long-term rush hour parking lot, and congratulations on the plan to improve that. This is the second CIAB meeting that I've attended, and in the first one, I think Larry Beckham raised a question, and the answer he got was, this is what the residents have said they want, and that's pretty powerful. That's kind of a showstopper on further conversation, because that's why we're all here. And over the years, I've spent a lot of time out there on the lake, kayaking and studying our parks, the current parks we have and the undeveloped parks. And we've had a lot of development at Paddle Point Park. And throughout that process, I've asked a few questions, and I got similar answers. This is what the residents have said they want. And I had enough time to talk with Brian about it and Angie. And Brian pulled up a study. I think he did a search, a word search or something like that on the word kayak. And we came up with three comments that had come back from the residents during that 3-year period. And taking that and applying it to those 60,000 people, you'll have to pardon me, I'm an old CPA, but that comes out to a sample size of 0.00008 1/3. So, and actually, going too much detail, a couple of those 5 may not really be related to what we're doing with the park there. So I wanted, and I listened to the methodology, and I think that methodology was spot on. It was a very good way to collect this information for the CIAB project. And bear with me on this, but when we talk about strategic planning and the future of Rowlett, I think we all, or the majority, agree that it's using the location we have on the lake to its fullest, capitalizing on our location here. And I took a look at our bond package, primarily for parks, because I think that's the one that's going to tie us in with the quality of life on the lake. And of the $9 million, I didn't see any material or even almost any material amounts that applied towards quality of life on the lake. I think there was one small part possibly of the Pecan Grove Park that might apply to the lake. But looking through that, if I were going to apply a ranking for everything we could do on the lake, with that portion being so far upstream, whenever the water level drops, we have a lot of mud. That might be one of the latter projects I would develop on the lake. So this bond project, as I understand it, pretty much commits us what we're going to do with our capital funds for the next 3 years. So if we don't have something in the bond project, this one, we're talking, I guess, 3 years in the future. And maybe a little bit of humor. I got a lot of gray hair, and I share that with, I guess, looking around here, some of the rest of you. And maybe some of you are camouflaging it with hair dye. But waiting 3 years for me, I'm running out of time to get some of this done. I've talked with the Park Advisory Board pretty extensively on this, and I'm not sure they're in a position really to lead the development, the quality of life things we're looking for, or the potential we have with the lake. So I'm concerned, well, I'd like to vote for a whole lot more than $9 million for the parks for quality of life here, because we need it. And I'm a little concerned about the prioritization of the $9 million we have. I'd like to see part of that going towards the lake and quality of life that I don't see on there. And I think somehow we need to get more public input. So instead of voting for $9 million, we're voting for a whole lot more, and we're doing something to develop the lake for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Well, there's some of the projects that also involve the lake could potentially be the trails, partnering with developers and using some of that money as partnering with the developers to make connection points that may be outside the limits of the development, because our code currently requires the developers, unless they get approval from the city council, to build that trail along their parcels. So there's some opportunities with the trail construction to invest in that lake. I wholeheartedly agree with you as well. The lake is our an investment.
So, Dave, I agree with you. I'd like a whole bunch more in quality of life also. You know, I think that Sean shared the numbers. It was over $460 million of identified projects in this community: infrastructure, quality of life, public safety. And we have a $60 million bond here, so there absolutely is prioritization. What I would like to say in regards to your specific comments about the lake, we got a $1.5 billion project going in that is a peninsula and is an incredible avenue to utilize our lakefront called Bayside. And, you know, that'll be an extensive trail system and a boat ramp and public access on the lake, and lots of attributes to the Bayside development, which is exactly what you're talking about also. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that, because that is very, very important to our community in regards to utilization of the lake. So did you want to add anything else, Brian?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Anybody else?
We got one on Facebook?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Here you go.
go ahead. We'll take the Facebook question after you.
Okay. Forgive me because I'm not real familiar with city procedure and the bond thing. It's kind of new to me. So my understanding is the bonds are is something held in trust by the city until the voters vote for it. Is that correct? The monies, or how does that exactly?
No, ma'am. Typically, when the bond election is successful, then the city will go out and issue the bonds afterwards.
Okay.
And we have to do that in 3 cycles. So there's 2018 we'll issue bonds, 2019 and 2020, about $20 million each year. And then we'll use that money to fund the projects that are on this program.
Okay. So 2015, my understanding is still in the process of being completed. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So how far are we, or how far is the city from having that all completed and all monies run out for 2015?
We're probably about a year out to get everything completed as far as the 2015 bond election. There's a couple of projects we've experienced delays that were basically beyond our control. With road reconstruction, primarily the Main Street project, we've got to relocate those utilities so that to go underground, and that takes time because we've got to acquire easements. So the rough guess is we'll have everything done potentially next year, completed, so that way we're going to go right into the 2018 bond program with the new one.
Okay, one more question. I'm hearing all the positives about why we need to pass 2018. Is there any negatives that would happen if it's passed, or?
Well, I don't know if there's any negatives per se. I will say that there's a lot of needs in the community. If it doesn't pass, then obviously those needs still remain without getting anything done. And that's the choice of the voters. So we're just trying to invest in the community and do the best that we can with the resources that we have.
I will add too that it is a matter of prioritization. So when our voters are looking at needs in the community, you know, as Sean said, we had over $400 million worth of needs we identified. The question is, where do you stop at and how far can you go? And so somewhere around that $60 million range, we determined that that was the appropriate amount. But even as we've heard tonight and we've heard from others, you know, people would love their alley to be in there, their street. You're looking at that entire list. But we have spent, with the Citizens Advisory Board, they have spent over 2 years going through every project, all the needs, and then ultimately prioritizing those needs. So again, as Sean said, even if this doesn't pass or if something else is done, those needs will still remain. And meaning that those parks still need to be done, those streets need to be done, those alleys need to be done.
Okay. We have a citizen that has several questions. So his first one is, will the profits from the sale of the land that Fire Station 2 currently sits on go towards paying down the bond, or will they go into the general fund?
Typically that could happen some distance out in the future. First off, we have to construct the new station, then you have to move everybody over there, and then something's going to happen with that land. What I would say is that at some point we will end up evaluating whether to sell that land, and if we do, most likely those funds will go into the general fund.
His second question is, what is the purpose of the Environmental Learning Center?
The Environmental Learning Center will really become the nature center for the city of Rowlett. It is designed to be a sustainable facility that can be used for education purposes, to teach about water quality, plants, native Texas plants, in addition to have some classroom space, hopefully. So what this will help us do is really design what that facility looks like. There is a design that was done several years ago floating around, but let us go back to the drawing board, make sure all of those elements are still relevant, and then begin to help keep Rowlett beautiful, which will be a partner in this project, to begin some seed money for the actual building of that.
But the bond does not fund the Environmental Learning Center. It is money set aside from a matching standpoint if and when the money is raised to build an Environmental Learning Center, and that money would be raised by nonprofit organizations, not by the city.
right, and he would like some clarification on why we need a mobile stage.
So we currently rent a stage about 8 times a year, 8 or 9 times a year. There are a number of events, other events that we could use a stage for. With downtown developing, they have a number of events they can use a stage for. And so every time we rent a stage, there is a cost associated with that. This would be a one-time cost. The stage absolutely will last a long time and give us some flexibility for some of those events where we need a stage, but we don't rent a stage currently.
And Angie, we've done research. Those stages last 20-plus years.
Yes, ma'am, they do.
And he would like to know why we can't vote line by line. Why do we have to buy the whole package or nothing?
Typically, you cannot do that. With a bond election, it is based on ballot by ballot by ballot. If we were to set up a separate ballot for every project, we could easily have 100 items because you're talking about every alley then, you're talking about every street. That's just typically not done. You do lump these together. You have to do it progressively. You have to do it, for example, you don't want the parks tied in with the streets. So we have streets and alleys together. We have parks and quality of life together, and we have public safety together. But once the city council passes the ballot to put those on the ordinance, then only the public can only vote for up or down for each item. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I addressed this to you earlier, but I'm still concerned about the Miller Road project, that you're taking a 2-lane road and making it 4 lanes, and it goes into a bridge that only has 2 lanes. And you said that, well, sometime in the future, the bridge may be expanded, but how long is the future? What problem does it solve until the future comes along? I can't see any benefit by doing that. You've got 4 lanes of traffic that all of a sudden are going to become 2 lanes of traffic. And you're not going to go any faster than you are right now. And it just seems to me to be money misspent. And I would think it'd be wiser to get a commitment from the city or the county of Dallas, whoever is responsible for the bridges. When they decide they can enlarge the bridges, then maybe that project should be included in a future bond issue.
You have a very good question. And to answer the first question of when it's going to happen, it's a great, I don't know the answer to that. But the city continually is going to be looking for funding opportunities from a regional perspective. The last estimate that we had for the bridge, for the new bridge, was $20 million. That's half of the $40 million that's being considered on this Proposition A. So it's a sizable project. But the goal is to get that traffic, especially around the Chisa intersection, and be able to get the drainage out of the bar ditches. You've got sidewalks. There's kids that walk in those ditches every day trying to get to that school. So this will improve that area, and it'll also show that the people that are in charge or oversee that funding that, look, this makes sense. That city's done everything up to that point. Let's get this done. So it uses momentum as well. If we continue to have a 2-lane road and it's not improved, we're not going to get anywhere. So we wanted to go ahead and utilize that money from the Dallas County, the $2.8 million, and hopefully more if I can be successful in asking that, but the county, but to use that and leverage to get that project done. The transition is going to be long enough so that there's enough safe room for people to merge back into the 2 lanes. It's not optimum, I agree, but there's no driveways other than at Paddle Point Park and that streets beyond the railroad tracks until you get on the other side. So that traffic should flow smoothly. It will probably be bumper to bumper, but that's just the best we can do at this point.
I would also like to add that is also a strategic objective because right now Chisa is primarily 2-lane north and south. And if you look at the major corridors of the city, having Miller Road improved with all the traffic congestion it already has, and then also starting to address Chisa Road from Dow Rock to Miller, and then eventually beyond that, Miller all the way to the North Shore, is a critical path for people to move throughout the city of Rowlett. You know, it is a very strategic project for us. Other questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Richard Singleton. I live in Trace Meadows off of Dow Rock, between Dow Rock North and Princeton. And I have occasion regularly to go down Liberty Grove to the Merritt Interconnect. And I wonder if the project to extend Merritt all the way up to Liberty Grove, that connector, where is that in this process?
Another great question. In the 2015 bond election, it included the money to design that project, and it's probably about 45% designed. We'll have that design completed this year. The goal with that is to have that design, it's shovel-ready, then begin the right-of-way acquisition process once we get funds to acquire for the construction. So we're also looking at that as a regional roadway to leverage city tax dollars with regional dollars, such as the Council of Governments, Dallas County. They've got a major capital improvement program that they're issuing call for projects here in the next year or so. So we're going to continue to look at that. We also have been working with COG, and they've committed that they're going to do what they can to help us get that project delivered sooner than later. I wish I had a timeline, but we're pushing for it because that is a critical north-south or east-west roadway up on the north side of the city.
Just one follow-up. I have heard that Liberty Grove, southwest of the Bush, is supposed to be improved and then turned to go across to Hickox and on to Castle at some point. Where is that in this process?
It's a good question. I'm trying to visualize what you're pointing out, but we've got our master thoroughfare plan that identifies roadways as those undeveloped properties develop. So exactly the limits of those, there'll be probably more development driven as those properties develop, and we work with the developers to get those constructed.
But it's not in this bond.
Yeah, it's not.
It is not in this bond.
They're tearing up the ground on Hickox between Merritt and I can't remember that cross street's name, but it's between Rowlett Road and
Correct.
Merritt, and it's on the, I would say, east side of Hickox. There's huge machines in there digging up. It looks like for a subdivision.
That's correct. It is a residential subdivision. They're building phase 1 of 2 phases, and it's part of the city's form-based code, and it'll be a residential subdivision. I believe there's, Paul, help me out, 70-something lots in first phase?
Yes.
Yes.
Should be 150, 160 lots total with both.
150, 160 lots total.
What other questions do you have?
We have some on Facebook?
Yep.
This question has 2 parts. What is the city's current bond debt to revenue ratio, and what effect will approving these bonds have on that ratio? And then he would also like to know, is that ratio in line with other municipalities?
Yes, the city of Rowlett has a very solid AA bond rating right now. And these bonds are strategically designed to keep us within right at that 22.6 cents of our INS rate. Right now, our INS rate compared to the total tax rate is about 29%. These bonds, if they're issued in the future, will keep us at that level, which also means then that in terms of the question being asked, what is the total outstanding debt the city will have divided by the total tax assessed value, we will be able to stay at around that 2%, which is a very strong number for our bond rating agencies. This bond offering will not negatively impact our bond rating because we are a solid AA bond rating now.
And what is INS?
I'm sorry. The interest and sinking fund. Property taxes are split into 2 rates. There's the operating and maintenance portion, and then there's the bonded indebtedness portion to pay your annual debt service, just like you pay your mortgage note. So that rate is established at right now about 22.6 cents out of the total 77 cents, and that's about 29%.
How does that
You know, it's interesting because not every city has a AA rating. Rowlett has some very strong factors going for it. For example, it's a diverse community when you consider the fact we don't have just one large employer. You know, some cities that could be a real issue. Our economy is very strong. Our reserves are very strong. Our financial management and stewardship is very strong. All of those are positives that the bond rating agencies take into account. Our total bonded indebtedness or outstanding debt is also within reason too, given the resources that we have. This is one of the reasons why we're a very strong AA bond rating. Okay.
Are there any plans to make Liberty Grove 4 lanes from Chisa to PGBT?
Yeah, there's the master thoroughfare plan, I believe, has that roadway as a 4-lane undivided. If I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go back and look. But that is one of the roadways that probably be one of the last to widen because it doesn't really serve a lot of area that's outside the floodplain. So it's not in this bond program to do such, and it didn't rank very high. But at some point, we want to get all of our asphalt roadways to city standards at some point. And that's the ultimate goal.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I am Larry Perkins. I've lived in Rowlett for, let's see, close to 30 years. I've been through a lot of these bond elections and stuff, and ever since I've been here, we've been a city on the lake, right? And as it was pointed out earlier in the discussion, we really don't have lakefront activity. And I realize there's some coming and some other stuff, but also as I've lived in Rowlett for about 30 years, I really haven't seen a reduction in taxes. And I can tell you this year, our property values have gone up, maxed out to the max they can be lifted. That's, I know you're saying it didn't change the rate, but it did change the amount of money we're paying in. And, you know, and we're sitting here and we're doing things which I don't quite understand, of fixing the golf course. Golf course has been here for 20 some odd years. Where's the money gone that we've collected from that golf course? Why are we now having a bond to go fix something that charges people to use the services? And are we increasing the service fees for the people who utilize that park? And why, along those lines, you know, we talk about green spaces and stuff like that, but I see all of our parks being consumed by basketball courts and soccer fields and baseball fields. And there's really very little to few green spaces out there. And, you know, to utilize the property, you've got to be a part of a team somewhere. It's really, to me, it's just taken away from the family and giving to special needs people in all of these areas. And I'm a little concerned that, as you said before, you like to put all your things together, but I hate to see the golf course break your parks program. And I find that very frustrating.
So you got all of those questions?
Yeah, well, I can remember.
If
about
we
2 of
miss
them.
one, come back to us, Larry, okay? Because there's lots of stuff in what you said that we want to address.
I'm going to start off first and most. You know, where the golf course is concerned, we own the golf course. We don't run it. American Golf runs it, but it is a city asset. And almost 20 years into it, I think we're at 18 years actually right now for the golf course being used. Those greens are not in the best shape. They're not going to last forever. At some point, if you want to have that as a community asset, you've got to do something with it. That's no different than our parks. You know, you mentioned, and you're right about, you know, special interest, I think as you called it. But, you know, you think about, you know, the stages of life people go through. When my kids were young, they played ball. You know, I wanted to have those ball fields in my community. And I was willing to pay for those as a taxpayer. But not everybody has kids. Not everybody wants the same things. Trails. Trails is a big deal. Ever since I've lived here, I've had people ask me, why don't we have the kind of trails Plano does or Dallas does or somebody else does? We want those trails in our community too. This bond election actually puts the most money that we've ever put forward in one election for trails. They're needed. People want to use them. It's just not healthy and just for exercise. People desire that as a quality of life amenity. Everything on this bond election is about fixing, improving stuff that we already have. Even the wet zone, trying to add another feature in there, trying to improve some of the things that we have in our water park. Not everybody uses the water park. So again, it comes back to the fact there are people who do use those assets, and we need to keep up with them, we need to improve them, and we need to make sure that people don't consider Rowlett just the city of streets and running water, but takes into account the quality of life that we need as well. I do want to address the issue also of increasing tax values, because it is very true. Our tax values are increasing. They have been since the Great Recession. Tammy and I have talked about that numerous of times. I think everybody is a little surprised how fast our economy has grown since the Great Recession. A couple points I'll make about it. That includes us too. My tax values since the recession have grown 34%. The mayor's has grown 39%. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to know that, but it's public information, by the way. So, that's
Why don't you just give him my address, Brian?
Yeah, that's not just everybody. Not just us, but it's everybody. It is affecting everybody. So we do understand that. But regardless of what happens with the election, the needs are still there. People who have lived on streets that have a pavement condition index. It's a way that we monitor or assess the quality of the streets. We're replacing Woodside right now. We used to call that a third world condition street because it was in such poor shape. Our fire station number 2 is on that street. It's about time we got that street fixed. So we understand the fact that that people's taxes are going up. We understand the fact that what's going on in North Texas. This isn't just a Rowlett issue. All of North Texas is growing in leaps and bounds right now. And because of all the jobs, because of all the people moving here, it is having an impact on housing. It's having an impact on our values. One last thing, you might have had 5 or 6 questions, and I can only remember 3 at a time. But one other thing I would say, too, is that we want to position ourselves to be the kind of quality community that people want to live in. And you have to keep up with your infrastructure. The 5-year drought, quite frankly, kicked our butt. Every year went by, we saw our streets deteriorate faster than they have ever done so before. Why a lot of that? Drainage. I was talking to somebody earlier this evening. Most alleys are also the drainage. There's not a drainage system to capture the water and remove it. The alley itself is that drainage. And so it takes money, it takes time to keep up with these things. But if we don't invest that kind of stuff in our community now, then we're going to fall further behind, and that is the truth.
And we're going to come back to you to see what we didn't address, but I want to make a couple other comments. The golf course is in dire needs of capital improvements. If we don't invest in this golf course, we are risking losing that asset in this community. I fully, truly believe that. And that golf course is not just about special interest golfers that come to our community or are in our community. We average about 38,000 rounds in that golf course per year. That's our own residents, that's people coming in from the area, that's an economic driver for any community. Golf courses, proven economic driver for a community. See what happens to our neighborhoods in that area if that golf course is not maintained. It's more than just about golf. It's about the entire community. It's about the maintaining the quality of our neighborhoods. It's about maintaining assets in our community. It's not about if Tammy goes and plays around at that golf course at this point in time. It might have been about that when we decided to put the golf course in 18 years ago, but now we have a responsibility to maintain that golf course. And I think you asked a little bit about, where's that money gone that we've collected from that golf course? We turnkey the operation of the golf course to a third party, American Golf. I will tell you, one of the first things I did one of the first questions I had for Brian 4 years ago is, why aren't we operating our own golf course? What's going on? Where's all the money from the golf course? And then he showed me what happens with the financials of operating a golf course. And I'm not going to tell you what communities we've researched this with, but they are often not money-making ventures in their own right. They have a very large positive impact on a community, but as far as operating a golf course, it's a very, very difficult task to undertake. And probably the best decision this community made over the last 18 years was to turnkey the operation of that golf course over to a third party and not incur the general fund obligations to maintain that golf course year in and year out. So I'm a very big advocate. We have to replace these greens. They're not going to fail in a couple years. They're failing right now. And, you know, I don't mean to scare anybody, but we have a couple of really close examples of golf courses that didn't survive. We got Eastern Hills in Garland. Ask the neighborhood how they feel about Eastern Hills closing down and what it's done to their quality of their life and their neighborhood and their values of their homes. Of course, maybe we would like a little reduction in our values of our homes right now. I know that's a double-edged sword, but that's real important to the quality of your community. We have another example in Rockwell with the Shores. You know, the Shores was not maintained like it needed to, and that community had a lot of negative impact as a result of that. So it is my responsibility, it is city council responsibility, it is the city staff responsibility to maintain these assets that we have. And the golf course is a very important one, the wet zone is a very important one, we have lots of other ones. In regards to your lakefront question, and you know, Dave hit on it too, we underwent a comprehensive plan in 2011. It's called Realize Rowlett 2020. And we spent a couple years before 2011 developing that plan, and from the years 2011 through the current date, implementing many, many aspects of that plan. One of the things that we identified is that we're a really good community of a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, and we give away our lakefront to individual residences. And what that prevents is our entire community from benefiting from that lakefront. So we underwent a plan and an implementation of a plan to develop the rest of our lakefront area in a manner that our entire community could benefit from, and not an individual home that had access to that individual lakefront. The problem is the cat was already out of the bag, and a lot of that had already been developed. So what you will see over the last 7 to 8 years is implementing that plan where we can all better benefit from that lakefront. You know, Bayside is one of those. There's lots of other examples. Terralago is another one. What's the name of the one?
Signature Gateway.
Signature Gateway is another one. So all of those developments are going to have lakefront access and trail systems so that our entire public can benefit from that lakefront. In addition, we talked about in this bond offering the Main Street, which direction am I? Thank you, Angie. You know, the Main Street development we're going to do there. We want that lakefront developed so that we can have another access point for our public. Quite frankly, a lot of our lakefront in our immediate area is not suitable for launching a motorboat. The Dow Rock area is, the Bayside area is, and there is a public boat ramp there. It's widely used. That's in the city of Rowlett, and we absolutely are requiring Bayside to maintain a public boat ramp with their development of the Bayside development. So it is very important to us. We are focusing on it. We are trying to fix past indiscretions and have more access to all of our community for our lakefront. You will be amazed at the trail system that we're putting in surrounding the entire Bayside area, and we want it to come up to Lakeside Park, and that's all lakefront area that the public will have access to. So we're not there yet, but we're trying to get there. So what did we not answer, Larry?
I understand your situation with the golf course, but I've failed to believe that with all the golf courses in the world, that they're not profitable. If they're not profitable, you're doing something wrong, personally, okay? So I'd either say, get in the business to win, or get out with the golf court. That's just a comment, okay?
If you're going to change subjects, though, let us just do one at a time. 'Cause
Yeah, no.
This is a little brain sometimes.
Okay, that's
So-
fine. But you don't necessarily have to answer that, but it's just going forward.
I didn't say all the golf courses in the world, but I did say we've done a lot of research, and we made a really good decision over the last 18 years, and there's a lot of golf courses in the area that are very difficult to make money operating. Okay?
I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. There was that. And then, you know, you talked about the development of lakefront property. Like I said, been here for 30 years, and the lakefront properties we've had, it was a struggle to get that park built there along Miller, you know, on the south side of Miller. It was a big struggle to get that park built years ago.
Lakeside Park?
Yeah, Lakeside Park.
It's a beautiful park.
Well, it's a beautiful park. I was on the park board at the time, and we got that started. But the property just north of there has looked like that for 30 years.
It's about to change.
Yes,
You know
it's about
that.
to change, but.
So Paddle
but
Point
for-
Park
but
is.
Paddle Point Park, though, for 30 years.
How much improvements in Paddle Point Park? $250,000, almost done. So we're making progress.
Well, okay, maybe.
A lot more to do. So I think, I mean, basically what I'm hearing is we should have put more than $9 million in parks. Yeah, I understand. I understand. Where is the golf course? The golf course is in Waterview subdivision.
Northeast corner in the city.
You're not a golfer, huh?
Any other questions for us tonight? If you don't have any other questions, we are going to hang loose. We have staff here, as the mayor said earlier, some of the council members, the mayor here. Glad to sit there and talk to you guys individually, answer any other additional questions that you may have. Anything else, Sean or Mayor?
Thanks again for coming out.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Guys,
coming
thank
out.
you so much. We appreciate it.
This council is committed to investing in our community and not kicking the can down the road. Thank you.